Greetings, everyone, and welcome back once again to another, excuse me, to an imperfect union. We are back. Took a little time off, little birthday time, whatnot, and unfortunately, the madness has continued. Tonight, we're going to have a very special guest, uh, Dr. Shaun Anderson. And I've had Dr. Shaun on the show before in a different context on our sports show, talking about the nuances of a black man uh, growing up as an athlete uh, within the inner city and some of the struggles and um, some of the things that a lot of us uh, kind of take for granted when you hear of high profile black athletes. And uh, we seem to forget of, about them as human beings. Now, there hasn't been any of us on the show that have uh, gotten to the level of competition that Dr. Shaun has. But if we put things in the context of being a black man who is an athlete, who is a hero to a lot of people, and dare I say, a role model to many within the community, even though we know only 1% of uh, athletes achieve things to this level. A lot come from humble beginnings. Um, and as Dr. Shaun comes on around 6:30ish, we'll talk a little bit more about this. Uh, and I guess a logical starting point uh, for a discussion would be the Miami Heat and Tamir Rice. When collectively as a team, led by LeBron James, D Wade, and others, led to the protests by black athletes against police brutality. Now, let's just put that in the perspective of 2016. We are in the beginning of 2023. And we have not come up with viable solutions for not having a decrease in the amount of instances that we have seen. We've just had another shooting in over the weekend. And I'm one of the first persons to point out that guns do not kill people. It's people with guns that kill people. Now, getting back to the attention of tonight's subject, which is the role of the black athlete, uh, both within our community as well as being ambassadors, and what this face should look like. Because it has taken many different paths to get to this kind of a clearing. And as athletes have started to accumulate generational wealth, have they used their platform to its best advantage? Um, hmm, where's my peoples at? Let's see. Do I have any messages? Okay. All right. So, um, I'm going to go Let's see. Um, Probably the first. Uh, Probably the first uh, meaningful, sig- significant um, collision between a black athlete and a social responsibility. I would have to go back to a young gentleman named Lou Alcindor who attended Powers Memorial High in New York City. This young man came out with, all the credentials, knowing that he was going to be a uh, a uh, famous athlete. But I don't think anyone, unless you were a part of his inner circle, really thought about Kareem as a um, becoming a devout Muslim. As a matter of fact, when you read, the early stories about him, it would seem that he was destined to be uh, a um, wholesome young Negro that was all about uh, 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 becoming a great basketball player. It was much further down the line when he became Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and he started talking about social change and social things within the media that you started hearing from the more acceptable uh, young men of the time. Magic Johnson, uh, 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 you know, you you started to associate, your black athletes were those that were also um, less less not more than likely to be men that fit within that certain box. Okay, one of the most famous pictures uh, is a meeting where it's around the table is Jim Brown, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Muhammad Ali, and there's another famous athlete that was also present at this meeting. But still, there was not a omnipotent presence around which everyone has anointed. Even Michael, you know, Michael. One of his most famous quotes is "Republicans buy tennis shoes too." So it wasn't about being politically correct. It wasn't about being politically sound. Um, and you were not exactly pointed out as a media for social change, as Charles Barkley so aptly put it at one time. I am not a role model for your kids. Which sounds very which, which sounds very callous when your children spend most of their time watching these sports figures and in a lot of cases trying to emulate them. So the purpose of talking with Shaun tonight and about his new book um, is because it it dovetails into sports where we see teams that are dominated by men and women who look like us, but do not seem to be willing to take on the social responsibilities that generational wealth, can have such a great impact on. Okay, now talking, let's let's use the three greatest influencers in today's sports media. And at number one has to be LeBron James. With the 20 plus seasons, the scoring title, uh, the numerous uh, titles, uh, at least I would say with on everyone's top five, LeBron James probably has the most influential face in sports. I see Dr. Casey's here. Good evening, Dr. Casey. How are you this evening?
I'm doing pretty good on yourself.
Hey, I'm still above ground. I'm back. I survived Vegas. Cold,
How was your time?
uh, cold.
Oh,
Yeah. Hey, I'm not sure what the hell's going on, but it now seems like the cold has even followed my behind back to California. This is supposed to be the coldest week, this upcoming week. Cold, wet, raining, but you know, hey, it is what it is, and yeah, I'm still above ground, so I'm good.
hey,
But yeah,
that
you
counts for a lot.
you So, how have you spent the last couple weeks while we've been off the air?
Well, I have been trying to figure out what my next move is, to be completely honest. I think I am going to launch two podcast shows. And I've just been really been trying to figure out what and how I want to do it. I want to do one with veterans to help veterans share their stories and give them a voice or a platform to express their voice. But then I also have a show that I want to do called The World of Sex, where I talk to people about sex, sexuality, and everything under the sun in and around the world of sex. So that's what I've been kind of working on for the most part, and just trying to figure out what my focus is going to continue to be this year.
Mm. Uh, uh, right now, I'm thinking of Vegas, and I'm thinking of how much. I'm thinking of taking odds between now and the time that Mr. Scott just magically appears on the air.
Is he coming today?
uh, uh, no, I mean, it seems I can never get him on the air unless you're here. So, I'm
He
just,
be here when I don't be here sometimes.
I'm glad you added that sometimes in there.
I mean,
But,
he was here before me, so it's not me.
no, 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 no. But it just seems to be like, one of those sometimes when you hear those vibrations in the air and, it's like Mr. Scott seems to have an affinity for
Beautiful
as,
women.
well, and especially when you start talking about sex and things like that. I mean, we are just elderly. We are not old, so
I mean,
I,
I think those two are one and the same, but that doesn't mean that you're inactive.
okay. All right. So,
I became an actual sex coach, so that is one of the reasons why I'm doing this show around the topic of sex, because what I found out is that a lot of people have questions as well as input, but they don't really have nobody to talk to or anywhere to talk about sex because it's a taboo subject.
okay. Um, you see, I'm trying to get from a taboo subject to there is no to me, and maybe there is no taboos about sex any longer. I mean, it's not like it was a brown paper bag item sold underneath the counter on 42nd Street. You know,
I
uh,
mean,
it, it,
you know how people are about just anything surrounding sex, especially because religion and society makes it like, oh my gosh, you're not supposed to talk about this, you're not supposed to do it. But that's the reason why a lot of people have difficulty in the bedroom and or end up cheating and or all the other things that come within that topic.
Well, I also think that our uh, sexuality has become very diluted, but that's another
Oh my god.
kind
These new
of.
kids, the new kids on the block is something else.
Hey, you know, it wasn't the new kids on the block that brought out the song "The Freaks Come Out at Night."
Right.
Okay, okay. So I mean, the only difference now is that people see your face.
Right.
Okay, if we was all still hidden behind party lines and paper
Mhm.
bags, you know. So, but I would like to, we've kind of dealt with this the responsibility of the black athlete to his community. We've kind of dealt delved. I put into this subject on the sports crib. We haven't really dealt into it too much here, but I thought in lieu or in light of some of the things that have been ongoing, and I started out with talking about Tamir Rice and the protest by the Miami Heat, uh, which got all shut up and dribble and so forth and so on. Uh, but when you're talking about what is now generational wealth, do you think that today's black athlete owes more back to his community, or do you think that we are putting too much responsibility on them by asking them to speak out on social issues?
Um, it so as far as owing something back, I don't believe that there is room to really owe something back because um in a sense, the community isn't always the person that pushes them into being a pro athlete. So to make them feel like they owe something to people that did not feed into their success would be like highway robbery almost. However, as an individual who wants to impact and influence the younger generation, I do believe that they should within themselves want to help people to come out of poverty-stricken situations. But generational wealth has to do more with a mindset change than just making money.
And how would you expand it?
I mean, when you talk about generational wealth, because first you got to deal with addressing trauma, whether it's emotional trauma, physical trauma, or whatever trauma that keeps people stifled, keeps people in fear. Because a person that gets wealthy but they're still hurt or they're still trying to prove a point, it don't matter the amount of wealth that they obtain because they will swindle it away. They will gamble it away. They will do all the things that they need in order to help them feel better but without actually feeling better. So it's just like a band-aid. I call it a band-aid effect in spiritual human behavior, my book. Because you're putting a band-aid. A lot of people use money as a band-aid on top of whatever is bothering them or whatever is wrong. So you have to address the trauma issues and the family dysfunction in order for generational wealth to actually take place.
I see our guest is already in the queue, Dr. Shaun Anderson. Uh, Dr. Anderson, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. How about you all?
Doing well.
I know this is a little different format than from the last one that we shared because we were kind of talking about your experiences uh, as a college athlete in the inner city and some of the things that you had to go through in order for you to uh, get to the next level. Uh, but this book kind of, uh, I want to say, it goes on from there and goes to a different level. How would you uh, feel your approach to this book as opposed to your first?
Oh, me. I'm sorry. I was just going along with the conversation. I was like, good. Yeah, these questions are great, man. What's going on? I was like, but no, here's the thing that I see when it comes to this book. We've seen for years, right, where uh, everybody's been telling athletes to either shut up and dribble. Politics has nothing to do with sports. Um, just play and entertain us. And so, what I wanted to do with this book was to highlight that, first of all, sport and politics have been around since way before the civil rights movement, right? And it's been around. It's been a part of the fabric of this country, you know, ever since a little bit after the Civil War. And so I wanted to first acknowledge that in this book, but then also talk about the dormancy, after the civil rights movement, and how we are here today, where several high profile athletes are now saying that, we have to use Twitter, we have to use all of our social media, we have to use all of our platforms to try to move the conversation from protest to policy reform. Now, it hasn't been perfect over this time frame, but I wanted to highlight, where we are and where we should go.
So, using that time frame,
Mhm.
that reference,
Yeah.
would you say how would you describe the ebb and flows of the role of the black athlete
Yeah.
along with the ebb and flows of the civil rights and post civil rights era?
We, during the civil rights era, of course, we had the big names, right? The Muhammad Ali's, the Althea Gibsons, the Bill Russells, Jim Brown, all of these sort of leaders, talking, protesting the war, saying that, you know, um, we're just going to fight against all of this stuff, despite what you do to us. And many of them paid the cost. I think, of course, Muhammad Ali's career suffered because he didn't want to go to the Vietnam War, and he probably would have won multiple heavyweight championships or stayed a heavyweight champion for years beyond what he did. But what we see now is that athletes, first of all, are getting paid significantly more than what we saw years ago. And because of that, that's why we saw many of them not even engaging in protesting, because it was a thing of, you just shut up and play. You make us money, you make yourself money, everything's going to be good. But what I think now, because we have movements that are shaking up society as a whole, like the Black Lives Matter movement, like we saw the Occupy Wall Street movement in 2008 come about, that it sort of paved the way for other activists and community leaders to kind of come together and put some agenda forward, athletes included. And so, again, this is the time to where organizations, big sport organizations, can't just, tell an athlete, you got to be quiet. Now they're holding these organizations accountable. And so we're seeing that shift too. It's not anything that we want all the way right now because I think we still have these owners who have all of this power who won't cease that power. I think once we get into the structures of these sports leagues, we'll begin to see a lot more significant change.
Uh, Dr. Casey, did you want to interject it?
No, I'll let him continue. I agree with what he's saying. It's definitely room for uh players of any sport to speak on things that directly affect them and their careers, because politics does affect their careers. But like you said, the owners don't want to mess up their money, so they need the sports athletes to be quiet, because we seen what happened to Colin. We seen what happened to like you said, Ali, but what happened to Colin was right there in your face. If you don't do what we want you to do and say how we want you speak what we want you to say and say it the way we want you to say it, then you're going to be out the door. It's the same thing that happened to Kyrie Irving. It's the same thing that happens to any athlete, especially because they're in a position where they can't speak their minds. I don't know what their contract may say. It may say that they can't say nothing, but they also know that if they say the wrong thing, that it can damage them or hurt them. And over the years, all sports leagues have become very politically correct in keeping their sponsors happy. They got people that's doing advertising and sponsoring things, so they got to say what needs to be said in order for them to maintain the funding that they're getting, whether it's shoes, whether it's the padding or the hats or the whatever the uniform is. It wouldn't be no different if Deion Sanders tomorrow said something crazy or something outside of the realm of what he already speaks on when it comes to politics. They would bench him too. He just Deion Sanders, so he's smart enough to know if he's going to say something, how to say it in a way to where it won't come with the backlash.
Yeah. And to even add to that, I think about Tom Brady, for example, Aaron Rodgers, these sort of prototypical NFL white quarterbacks that I believe how the media has perpetuated it to be, above reproach. You know, years ago when Terrell Owens was playing in the NFL, all of these commentators were saying, "Oh, he's on the sidelines yelling. He's a team obliterator. He's messing up the chemistry of the team." Well, I'm looking at Tom Brady right now, in a game where he was literally yelling at the referee from the end zone to the sideline. He did the same thing on the bench, but the commentators were saying, "Oh, he's being a leader. He's protecting the team. This is greatness." But Terrell Owens is a Hall of Famer as well, and
So
so
they got favoritism.
right, exactly. And so if you think about a Tom Brady now, he doesn't have to come out and say anything because he's protected. And Aaron Rodgers, he went through his whole thing about the vaccine and the psychedelics, and he's still probably going to get a multi-million-dollar deal for whatever team he goes to after the Packers. And so that's that system in play, right? We take the WNBA for example, who in many cases, especially in 2020, led a huge movement, particularly Renee Montgomery, when she called out the owner of her former team, and then her and her team turned around and bought that team, you know. And so you don't see a lot of athletes doing those types of things, but that's the type of shift that's a little bit different from what we saw again during the civil rights movement.
So, would you say that athletes and social media need to be more team friendly?
Team friendly, like what do you mean?
Well, like you mentioned, Tom Brady.
Mhm.
Aaron Rodgers, and then you also mentioned, T.O.,
Yeah, yeah,
even Randy Moss to a certain extent.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, So, are you saying that with today's platforms,
Hmm.
that the black athlete should be more, uh, should use his influence
Hmm.
more on social media than leaving it to the establishment, quote
Yeah,
unquote?
gotcha. Yeah, no, I think probably not just social media, but I think social media is a very large platform where a lot of information is spread, over time, whether it's fake news or true news, social media is out there. I was looking at this meme the other day that said Twitter is like the cesspool of society right now because of everything that's kind of ebbing and flowing through it. But I think this is I think again social media. I think going straight into the front offices of these leagues, like some athletes have been doing over the past few years, is the way to go. I don't think it's I don't think it's the time now to stay politically correct just to you know keep the check flowing. Even though for some of them I understand, especially those who are not high profile. But at the end of the day, it's time for many of them to be able to speak their mind and talk about these issues because again, now is the time that these social movements have taken over. They themselves, you know, have a voice at this point.
So, what lessons have you taken through from your career,
Mhm.
that you would like to see implemented more within the structure
Yeah.
of athletics, or within the the approach of the black athlete to societal problems?
Yeah. So, what I've seen lately and what I've experienced, who I've talked to, particularly some of the people I interviewed in the book, is that I really like how some athletes, are actually partnering with criminal justice reform organizations, for example. I talked to the president of the Vera Institute of Social Justice in New York. And he was talking about how Karan Butler, who is, of course, former NBA player, current coach for the Miami Heat, um, has spent years working and partnering with them to, try to eradicate criminal justice issues in the state of Connecticut. Of course, where he went to go play college basketball and all that stuff. And it would be great to see more of them become involved in the organizations that have all of this data that can back up a lot of the things that they're talking about. Because all of these other people who are say against the Black Lives Matter movement like to throw out, well, here's what the All Lives Matter data says, and here's what all of this other stuff says to say that this organization is terrible. So it would be great to see them when they do have the time. I know their schedules are busy, to take the time to sit with these organizations that have been doing the work, and so they can learn and go out there with a strategy that could win.
Now, how would you bring that down to a grassroots level,
Yeah,
to whereas we can bring this uh, as something that our youth can actually participate and look forward to having, rather than it seems like at every turn having programs shut down in your face,
yeah,
having a lack of educational facilities sometime within your community, lack of food deserts within your community.
Yeah.
How do we filter these down to a grassroots level rather than keeping it to where some people feel that it if I can't see it,
Yeah.
it doesn't apply to me.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. No. It's. I think Colin Kaepernick kind of created the blueprint in many ways, because when he went through all the stuff that he went through prior to being blackballed, he created this whole Know Your Rights campaign, and it was really structured for youth who may find themselves entangled with, police or racial profiling at some point. Along with that, all of the monies that he said that he was going to start sending out, he started sending it out to many of the youth grassroots organizations and nonprofit organizations throughout the country, while also holding meetings and after school programs, and also donated to a lot of the food organizations, because he was talking about health and health is wealth and all that stuff too. And so I think that was a great start, a good establishment. But I think many people need to latch onto an idea such as that. I mean, this website is out there; people can see it. But I think for some of these athletes and for some of these other people, they don't want to touch him right now, right? Because he's still a problem in our society. But I think what he did can set the tone for other types of know your rights movements to come, if people would just pay attention to it and get past all of the other stuff that they claimed that he did.
Not the case.
I think that everybody just scared.
Yeah,
And it's crazy because if they all took a stance, then they can't punish everybody because then they won't have anybody to make their money.
yeah,
But as long as that fear exists, it's a matter of fear from the organizations, but also a fear of their family, of proposed wealth loss. But we always have to remember that a lot of these athletes are not as rich as their contracts. A
hmm,
lot of people, well, one, the contracts are over a course of time or a period of time. So they're not getting all of the money up front. But then in addition to that, the more money you get, the more shit you buy. The more shit you buy, the more debt you're in. The more debt you in, the more broke you are. So they're living oftentimes from paycheck to paycheck.
yeah,
I actually spoke to somebody a while back, and they were saying that it was an athlete and or ex-athlete, and he was saying that a lot of people that he knew from the entertainment sports world, they were broke. So you're talking about taking young people that didn't have no money management skills and putting them to a high paying job. And now if they say anything that could trigger them being fired, them being benched or anything else, they don't know how to adjust. It's almost like if you give uh um a rap artist or a any type of artist or actor, if you give them so much money, they know that anytime they could be blackballed. So they're scared to touch any topic. They're scared to collaborate or be seen with or be frolicking around because they don't know if the people that's in leadership are looking for a reason. Sometimes you could be right on the edge and you don't even realize that people are looking for a reason to pick, bother, and to push you out. So it's really a lot of playing it clean or close because you don't know if that is going to be your job next year for real. Like you might have a contract, but if they decide to find a loophole in it because they put loopholes in it,
yeah,
um, for the benefit of themselves, so they can terminate you at any time, then you're at a disadvantage. But again, if everybody came together, like when everybody was kneeling, but then they got scared to kneel. It's like they'll try, but then shit, they ain't about to mess up their money. And that is the mindset that they have
yeah,
because at the end of the day, a lot of people that are rich are broke. They living from paycheck to paycheck, just like the people that's poor. Now they don't talk about living from paycheck to paycheck, but when you go buy all the jewelry, all those cars, you buying everything for your family because you feel like you owe everybody to you know put them in position. And this is what I was saying earlier, as far as I think that it's a little bit overkill when we expect athletes to go and take care of the community because they have to one secure themselves. They have to secure their family, the family that they plan to build. And a lot of these athletes, they might get life insurance through the league that they're playing in, but that doesn't mean that they have individual life insurance. So if something happens, yeah, the league is gonna get paid, but they might not get money afterwards. So it's when you talk about sports in particular, it's so many narratives because some of them go to school and actually learn something, but a lot of them are not taking anything from school that they can turn into something else. They're just using that as their only source of income. So if they get kicked off the team or get kicked out the league, then they don't know what to do. They don't know where to go, and then that's why you see so many ex athletes and on social media trying to make a name for themselves, trying to go viral because they don't have nothing else. They have
Yeah.
nothing to fall back on. And it's really actually very sad that they have not built up other things in order to have something to fall back on. But it's no different than any other entertainment career that you can have because a lot of these people they get on their eyes are big. They want all of these things that make them feel like they've made it. And then they're left with not being able to speak up when they want to speak up, not being able to do what they really want to do the way they want to do it because they're being watched, monitored, and critiqued on every single level when it comes to executives, whether it's record label execs, whether it is the execs in these league offices, all of those things, the commissioners of all these leagues sometimes are waiting. You know why? Because there was if out of 1,400 people that tried out, they only picked two. Guess what? It's still 1,398 people that could take your spot, and they gonna hang that over your head. That's the only reason why I don't like when people chase the money, because a lot of times they're giving you the money so that they can hold it over your head. When you do advertising, when you do all these things, this is why up until this point, I have not done any type of advertising on any of my platforms because I know that once you begin to take people money, 9 times out of 10, they're gonna say, "Well, I need you to not do this, or I need you to say it like they want to control to some extent." So it's really getting athletes to be self confident, but all of their confidence comes from playing sports. All of the attention that they get comes from playing sport. It's like a woman that go get a BBL. She wasn't hot before then, so she got to keep the BBL up, or maybe get 3, 4, 5 BBLs, and that's the Brazilian butt lift. You know, when they take all their fat from their stomach and put it in their booty or put it in their tits. But when you do that, you got to keep it up because now you're getting attention that you never got before, especially for the ones that ain't never felt like they was pretty or they needed this, and then they got attention. They have to keep it up. They have to keep doing something because they don't know where their money is coming from. It's like if you start an OnlyFans, and I know this ain't on subject, but it is. If you start an OnlyFans, you got to keep it up because you don't know where your money is coming from.
Evidently, she didn't want us to hear that.
And he was rolling it.
we, 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 we went straight censorship from BBL. What happened? What's up, Dr. Casey? We can't hear you.
I think there she go.
See, she got too many bells and whistles. See
Yeah,
that? See?
got it going. But you know, I don't want to say nothing to Dr. Casey if he wasn't done. But you know, to even add to that, you know, those are like excellent points. Like I wouldn't even stick to the money because you think about your average NBA player who's actually pretty decent, probably is becoming an all-star that signs a 5-year, $50 million contract. Of course, 10 over that 5. You know, who doesn't have any endorsements. You're probably going to be looking at maybe maybe 20,000 of that being the money that you actually have over those 5 years, because people don't understand that. Yeah, you're getting taxed, of course, with the team that you play for. Say it's the Lakers, but out of all of those games, those 82 games, half of them are on the road. You're getting taxed also for all of those games on the road. you know. So, and then it's the half that's just taken by the federal government altogether. So, so as Dr. Casey was talking about, you coming out of college, going into the pros, getting all this money, you think all of that is yours, but all of it is gone. And by the time you get that bonus, you'd have bought everybody on your block a house or a car
Mhm.
or a watch or something. And then when you don't buy one person something, they're going to try to sue you for something like, whatever. I've seen where some athletes were sued by their parents because the parents were like, I took care of you for 18 years. That's labor. So I'm going to sue you for all the labor that I had to deal with you. And so, again, it's that what I call felt obligation that you have to do this because all the hood supported you. You made it, and now everybody wants to eat at Ruth Chris now, and so many of them, are dealing with that. And like you say, if there is something that you want to talk about, you can't do it because you're going to lose out,
Mhm.
right? Um, but I think the momentum, ever so slightly, is shifting just because you're seeing Nike and all of these companies trying to talk about, social justice and social change. Now, my issue with them at this point is that I think it's a bunch of lip service because they have to. They can't lose to the court of public opinion at this point. But that's the only type of shift that we're seeing. But as Dr. Casey also mentioned, not all of these athletes. Not You got the starters on the court, you got the starters on the field, but then it's more players on the bench, or more players that are reserves than there are those who make all the money. I mean, we see a LeBron $100 million contract that's still going to dwindle down to
Mhm.
maybe $40 million after all the taxes. So he has to have all of these endorsements in order to get to that point. That's why we're probably going to see a Space Jam 4 and 5. you know, it's that's just how it rolls. And so it's always going to be, until the structures change, a money game, and that's unfortunately where we are.
Well, now then, how do you change the game without moving the goalposts?
Yeah, I think like we got this Rooney Rule, right? We got these strong suggestions in the games that we see. The Bill Russell Rule also for like basketball, where okay, it's suggested that you hire a minority candidate. It's suggested that you
No, that
bring
you
somebody
enter.
else in.
Well, wait, not that you hire, that you
Yeah,
interview.
yeah, right. It's
You
suggested
interview.
that you
The,
interview these people. Exactly
right,
right. You don't have to hire them. You
right.
just just fill the quota and take it from there. And so what we've seen, like again with this last hiring process in the NFL, it's still a good old boy system. You know, so let's take the Eric Bieniemy situation. Who Eric Bieniemy was the former offensive coordinator, assistant head coach with the Kansas City Chiefs. Now took the same position with the Washington Commanders, and so many people say this is not a lateral move because he has more control with the Commanders. But the issue is there were other coaches who were under Andy Reid, of course, who was the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, who also didn't call as many plays, but were hired as head coaches. Eric Bieniemy was not. That's the problem, right? I think we have
But
Michael.
Dr. Sean,
Yeah,
is it just possible?
yeah,
Just possible,
uh
and
huh,
yeah, I've been covering Eric Bieniemy since he was at Colorado.
Yeah.
Is it just possible that he just wasn't a good hire? I mean, he just wasn't a good interviewer. I mean, look,
I mean, that could
eh,
be
I
for
mean,
sure.
yeah, I mean, I don't want to turn it into a sports show, but from a Super Bowl champion
Yeah.
to the Washington Commanders,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, maybe he should go talk to somebody.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. For
anyway,
sure.
yeah,
No, I mean,
but I understand what you're saying, though.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Go
Well, no,
ahead.
no, no. It's an excellent point because there have been some players who have, like, I think not this past year, but the year before, when it was the same situation, who have said, I don't know, he's not necessarily a player's coach type of situation. So I look at it from both sides. It's definitely not that I think that okay, well, he should just get hired off of
And
some type of
he
system.
just might get tired of that working for that old man too. I mean,
Probably, you
you
know,
know, the carrot and the stick. You keep promising me, but you ain't
yeah,
going nowhere.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
yeah. I mean, that's absolutely right. That's the thing. And so, it's always going to have to be, the shakeup of the front office, the ownership. You know, now the ownership is going to be the problem because these Jerry Jones has one of the worst franchises in NFL history as far as championships and playoff records are concerned, but they are the highest valued team in the NFL,
America's team.
America's team. Jerry Jones ain't going nowhere.
That's
Jerry
why
Jones,
out America.
80 years old. He ain't running out here like with these athletes, but he the first one to touch the trophy when they win the Super Bowl. So, I mean, when he's gone, he's passing it down to his son or his daughter, so on and so forth. That's just how it's built out, right? But I think if we can get the opportunities to infiltrate, and that may take some years, we can see some moving and shaking.
See that's the other part of this equation that kind of bothers me. It's like well, we haven't got there yet. But if we just keep striving along, if we just keep pushing the, if we
I agree.
just, you know, and uh, I point out to a lot of people. I've been around here a long time,
Yeah,
and I'm still just getting. If we just get it up,
yeah, yeah,
if we
yeah.
just, I mean, does there come a point do we just push the goddamn thing and I mean,
I guess how could you burn it all down and then because that's at the end of the day, that's I think the play, right? It's like this whole thing hasn't worked. We've been trying for years. Just throw this shit away and try to do something else, right? Uh, I absolutely don't know because how can we get in when, like you say, you keep moving the goalposts? We have a Michael Jordan in the front office, but Michael Jordan is Michael Jordan in many ways. But I don't know. You have to. I think we look at society, and I say again, we see that organizations as a whole, even our are now being called to be better. You know, being told to be better. They have to always come out with these press releases now when they mess up. We're seeing that happening. But again, if these structures are in place and there's no way to just tear it all apart, I don't know how it could happen anytime soon.
see, that's the operative word to me is soon. Soon for my grandchildren, soon for my great,
Oh yeah,
soon for the generation that's not here. I mean, is this like uh, uh the scoring championship in the NBA? That those people aren't born yet. That's going to get us past over that bridge.
yeah. I think we'll see in my honest opinion, it'll probably take 20 years to get 6 black owners across sports. The way that it's set up now, because again, the voting systems in all of these sports are they go about certain ways. When they were talking about the Denver Broncos, for example, who, which is funny, the former owners of the team, one of their granddaughters was a student in my class. And she was in class one day crying, just talking about, my world is lost. I don't know what to do, Professor Anderson. And then so I had to like sit in class with her and say, hey, what's going on? She said, well, my world is lost because my family is about to sell the Broncos. And I'm like, what you doing in my class? What am I teaching you for? You the billionaire, And so then there were these rumblings about Diddy and other folks,
Byron Allen,
who were wanting to buy the team. And of course, we know that it was the Walmart family who swooped in, and how could you resist at that point? So that's the thing for me. When can we get more Byron Allens to reach that level to then go in and make those moves? Because it's only one Byron Allen at this point, and he couldn't even get in for what reasons I don't know. But that's what we need. We need those types of people who have that type of clout to come in and infiltrate. How do they do that? It remains to be seen, but that's what's needed. But I don't see that happening tomorrow. Maybe
So what makes a Magic Johnson successful?
Yeah.
And not a Byron Allen?
That's a great question. I think for a Magic Johnson, first of all, of course, when we say he has part ownership of the Dodgers, we're not talking about majority. We're not talking about that 51, 49, and everything else kind of trickles down. But still, I think for Magic, it was the success story of being an athlete turned business person who, of course, during this playing time was relatively beloved, person, global person. The NBA, still talks about him in great stature. But a Byron Allen, a Robert Johnson, of course, former BET, chairman and owner. It's like they, in a sense, have to pay this penance of, okay, let me get to this billionaire status first before I shake up things. I think that's what society has deemed them to be. But a Magic Johnson, a Michael Jordan, maybe even a LeBron James at some point, they have a global name. And I think that's what has helped them move into that next level. Maybe down the road, we'll see the Byron Allens and the Robert Johnson sort of take over also. Robert Smith, but that remains to be seen.
What happened there, Dr. Casey? Did we lose you? Let's see.
Oh, there she is.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm having some issues with my internet. I want to say it happens every time I'm on StreamYard, but I think it happened when I was on a different. No, it might have been StreamYard. But yeah, out of my control. Difficulties.
So, what do you think makes a Magic Johnson more successful than a Byron Allen, Dr. Casey? When
He the only nigga ever in the world of history that had AIDS and got cured. What you talking about? He took one for the team a
See,
long
that-
he took one for the team a very, very long time ago to be able
Mhm.
to put himself in position, aside from him already being an athlete. But you gotta understand like where his mind at. Like, cause Shaq could be in a position to be part owner, but does Shaq want that responsibility? Does Shaq want to be in those rooms for real? Because sometimes the rooms that we think we want to be in aren't the rooms that we really want to be in, or with the responsibility that comes with it. Because now, if you are in a position of ownership, you really got to watch what you say even more than you did as a player, because just because they let you buy in doesn't mean that they really want you there, and doesn't mean that they're gonna want you to stay there,
Mhm.
unless you shut up, sit down, and just be there. And that's the thing that I believe that Magic Johnson can do that probably no other person could do, is just be quiet, because he's been playing this game for so long that he knows how to be a good dog. And I mean that just the way it sounds. He know how to be a good Fido, and fetch, and he's going, he gonna speak when he's supposed to speak, and he gonna shut up when he's supposed to shut up. And every other black person has not established that type of trust in those rooms to feel comfortable with them being there. Now, I do believe that Jay-Z has positioned himself to make room for people to come and be in more established ways within the NFL, being a part of the league as he's in there, but he's not in there, but he's consulting in a way that opens up doors. This is why we having all these black ass Super Bowl halftime shows. But in order for us to get to where we think we desire to be, that's our shoe in at this moment, because he's in a position where he can introduce the dynamics to where black people can seem trustworthy. I mean, they know they can trust us, but they don't trust us enough not to come in and take the fuck over and then kick them out all the way out. So it's just a matter of, really, it's not just the money, but the money plays a role. There's not too many people that have enough money to buy into being a co-owner, part owner. Even if black people came together, they would still make the number so astronomical to where they couldn't afford it. So it's just a matter of rubbing the right elbows, befriending the right people, and to some extent having not said anything that will make them not want you in their organization, because the individual organizations and then the actual organization that controls the individual organizations, they need to keep control as much as possible. Now imagine what the NFL would be like if a black owner took over. Let's say Puffy, let's say Diddy bought the goddamn Panthers. Diddy is not buying the Panthers and then keeping the Panthers the same. Diddy is buying the Panthers and then he's gonna ruffle a whole lot of feathers. He's gonna do a whole lot of shit. And if they can't force him out on a technicality, then they've lost already. Now they in a position to where they can't keep people out because he's got in. So it's a matter of not letting people in to where they feel like they're gonna lose control. This is the biggest controlling mechanism that white people have. Um, the government, but the sports, because sports control the government. A lot of these big agencies and corporations, they have more control over the government than the government has over the government. So when you get in the money, when you affect the money, then you affecting other things, and they don't want to put somebody in a leadership position that could really change things. They like the good old boys club. They like the way shit been. It didn't work in their favor for 100 some years. And they don't want that to go away. So I think that that is the biggest thing when thinking about how do we get people in a position to be part owner or co-owner. They're never going to want to give that away. And when I say give it away, I mean we gonna buy it, but they don't want us to give the opportunity for us to buy it. They'll make it an astronomical amount. They'll make it tough. It's almost like a hazing type of thing. They'll haze the hell out of a person that's even interested, just so that they would be like, you know what? I don't even want to do it no
Greetings, Miss Sims. How are you this evening?
I'm fine, very fine, well and good. Thank you all.
Miss Sims is from Minneapolis, and she joins us every week to talk about the different subjects as far as the black community is concerned. And Miss Sims, were you able to read any of Dr. Shaun's excerpts or media package that I had sent you earlier?
Yes, yeah, yes, I did. I did go through it. Very interesting material.
Did you have any questions for Dr. Shaun?
Well, one of the things that I look for, and maybe I missed it, was the in terms of college football players, was the the Syracuse black player boycott at Syracuse University in 1969, 1970. Um, I didn't see that in there, and I was looking for it. I guess because at that time it was a real big thing, but you also at that time you had protests going on for the Vietnam War, and Muhammad Ali was being reinstated and things like that. But I was looking for it, and one of the reasons I looked for it because I think that was a real historical event in regards to what those young men went through, and I know at Syracuse it changed a lot of uh, a lot of the a lot of the game of college football.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. Actually, my book, at least what I turned into my publisher, was a lot longer
Mm-hmm.
than what I had, and so I had to go through many rounds of arguments with my editor about what to keep, what not to
Uh-huh.
keep, and unfortunately, that was one of the ones that I had to take out.
Mm-hmm.
Which for me now, it's like, okay, I might have to go with another publisher when I'm going to start writing more extensively, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But no, you're absolutely right. The student athlete revolt during that time was very big, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but not as, of course, not as mentioned as a lot of again what is talked about in the book. So no, I definitely, you know, I wanted to acknowledge that, but
Uh-huh.
it
Uh-huh.
just didn't make it.
And James is always always get tell James that there are good things that come out of Minneapolis. And one of the young men, the football players that was involved in that boycott, lives here in Minneapolis.
Oh,
And
nice.
when I saw that you were from New York, and I thought, well, so that made me look even harder for that connection, Syracuse University connection, because at that time, with the boycott, um, the chancellor of the school at that time had an investigation and found like that the school was held accountable for institutional racism, and they were out of federal compliance in regards to some of the things that they were supposed to have at that time, which included getting more black professors. And so it's like, as I look at what the athletes are going through today, it was like the background. They set the door. They opened the door for all the things that the athletes now
Mm-hmm.
are privy to and things like that. But nobody, I think that they should have a special place in football Hall of Fame myself, because uh, what they did was tremendous, and their football careers were cut short, but they had advisors there that helped them keep their scholarships. So they uh, emphasized more on once they lost their um, football scholarships, they became more as academic athletes, and all of them graduated and things like that. And so I, I I just think as time goes on, especially this being Black History Month, and they seem to be have forgotten. And then 38 years later, 2006, is when Syracuse recognized recognized them and brought them back in regards to apologize and things like that, and gave them a chancellor's award, and our book was written about them and things like that. So I think a lot of people have missed out on that, but there's something that should be acknowledged.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely.
Dr. Shaun, I'd like to ask you about the influence of this particular gentleman in some of your observations, maybe teachings. Uh, and I first came across this young man. He was known as Lou Alcindor, but uh, he transitioned. He was the very first one to me that made the transition of from sports figure to humanitarian.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, how were you influenced by the words and deeds of uh, one Kareem Abdul-Jabbar?
You know, I it reminds me of like a lot of the things that my grandfather taught me years ago. So I grew up in Arkansas, born and raised South. My grandfather was from Mississippi, and he had an eighth grade education, but you know, he I thought was one of the smartest people in the world. So he taught me a lot about what he witnessed, you know, because he was born in 1914. All the things that he witnessed over the years, all of the athletes that he knew, and then he also was like into a lot of the politics, and so um, he taught me at an early age about how, you know, Buddy's my nickname. He was like, Buddy, you know, Cassius Clay, you know, Lou Alcindor, you know, they transition into, you know, the Nation of Islam and all this stuff like that, and you need to know about this because this is important because they tried to shut them down years ago, you know, all this stuff. And so I think what helped Kareem Abdul-Jabbar sort of, you know, become kind of a standalone figure, like you say, is the way that he was able to articulate a lot of the things that he was concerned about through his writings, you know, his articles, um, his books, you know, um, and how, you know, he would also tell all these other athletes, hey, yo, when he was in that dormancy, you need to step up and talk about these certain things. You know, I didn't lose anything relative to my career because I stood out and I talked about things. You need to do that too. And I was in a time where, you know, I could have been ostracized, but wasn't. And so I think, and then what he continues to do, even at this point in his career, is set a very smooth tone in how the messages about sport and social justice is articulated. And I think he does that better than many of the other athletes, even the modern day athletes of today. And so to see him and talk about him in this book, you know, was a pleasure for me. And again, he was one of the ones that gives me some type of hope of saying that, you know, sports can continue to make some moves in our society.
And I think that if he wasn't such a great athlete, he wouldn't have been. That wouldn't have less supported his platform in
Yes,
regards to him
absolutely.
being such a great athlete.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree 100%. I think that's the same thing with, again, the Michael Jordans, LeBron James,
Mm-hmm. Right.
all those figures.
Brother Williams, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. Can't complain. How about all the people, y'all?
Hi,
Good.
hi there.
Nice to meet you, Dr. Anderson.
Nice to meet you too.
Uh, Before I was going to let Dr. Anderson go, Brother Williams, did you have any questions or particularly observations from some of the things I had sent you from Dr. Anderson?
Uh, Not right off. I was just kind of more or less just gonna, because out of the group, I'm probably the least sports person. So I was just curious to really hear how it come together.
Yeah,
But
you know,
unfortunately,
yeah, no, so that's a great question. You know, like just this whole concept to me, um, I I kind of got tired of this whole thing that athletes just needs to shut up and dribble. They need to shut up and play, right? That they only see us as labor and not intelligence. And so, I took a pretty much an observation of, say, the Black Lives Matter movement, which we're in the 10-year anniversary of when that hashtag was first mentioned on Twitter. And I took a look at what has kind of transpired over that time with athletes when they like protested, like we had the hands up, don't shoot, for the then St. Louis Rams, who of course are now in LA, to the WNBA, to athletes wearing hoodies because of Trayvon Martin. I began to notice this shift of athletes who are joining along with politicians to say we need to release this George Floyd Act, the Sandra Bland Act, this, we need to do all of these things. And so I wanted to, in many cases, solidify this marriage between sport and politics, that is not something that is going to go away, that is something that's been around for well over 150 years. From the Cowboys, who were the black jockeys who got kicked out of the game because of Jim Crow and the separate but equal laws, to where we are now trying to implement new policies.
Question,
so that was sort of the motivation for it.
Real quick, a question is, would this tie in, or is there like some type of, how do you go about protecting them in their career and their contract in regards to this?
Oh, that's a great question. It's like now where athletes used to just only argue with their agent for incentives. It's like you have to, in many cases, like they have the no trade clause, you have to kind of argue now for, clauses relative to social justice issues. I think like the NFL, when the players push them to build the Inspire Change initiative to help the Black community, I think, the league can't punish athletes now for talking about social issues because they have become committed. And by committed, I mean they've put money into it, not necessarily that they believe in it, but they have to. They've been talked about too badly by these athletes. So I think, these are conversations that are needing to be made with the labor unions of these organizations, like the NFLPA. I was listening to DeMaurice Smith, who is the NFL Players Association executive director, who talks about how the league doesn't like him because of how much he advocates for athletes and their activism and all this stuff. And they've been trying for years to get him out. And so I think as long as we continue to have advocates like that, we will be able to see some forms of protection.
James, I have two questions before you Dr. Anderson leaves. I'd like to get his thinking on nowadays the college athletes being able to get some sort of funding from some of the things that the businesses have to use their images and things for. Mm-hmm. And then number two, my background is faith-based organizing, so my mind kind of always goes that way. And then number two, I think it was quite a contradiction there in Colorado, where you have the new coach there and everything positive going on. And in another part of the state, Black farmers, especially one in particular, are catching hell and wanting their land being taken, and the other farmers harassing them and putting them through hell. And I think they were supposed to do some quarter march on the Capitol on the 17th of February, a couple of days ago. And I thought such a contradiction, because some of those Black athletes now at Colorado State, their fathers could be the farmers that they on the part of the state. White folks are ready to string them up because they don't want the farmers to have their own money, and they already have the land and are trying to get the land taken from it. But such a contradiction. And I wonder how is the state, even if the state of Colorado is noticing the contradictions and how they could be interrelated. And so if you're thinking on those two things.
Yeah, so the NIL it's funny right now because of course that was a law that was initially forwarded to through two California senators, then sent it up to Gavin Newsom, then it spread, right? And here's the issue now. The NCAA has gotten rid of Mark Emmert, who of course was the president for years, and they recently hired a lawyer. Okay, the first time ever that they had a lawyer in place. My thinking, and I talked to several people who deal with the NIL issues, is that the NCAA is trying to fight back against this because now you're costing athletics directors, coaches, money in various ways. And so, I'm willing to bet that over the next 5 years, the NCAA is first going to fight for relevancy because that's the thing, that's the issue with them now. And secondly, they're going to try to figure out how to milk these NIL things to earn money back into their system as well. Now, relative to Colorado, it's interesting because I think Deion Sanders is one of those athletes who, again, like you say, played at a high level, extremely talented, probably the best defensive back in NFL history, now proved himself, and now he's at a big school. And so, they're going to eat that up so long as he's successful.
Right.
So long as he's successful, because, 3 years and they have a 6-6 season, he out. Right. And so I think I'm quite sure they recognize the contradictions. I'm quite sure that it's very prevalent, but I think that they feel like at least the state in of itself can avoid it because they're going to put so much into the promise of Deion and the culture that he's bringing. And again, it's going to be if he begins to win and win a lot, and maybe even bring a championship to the team, then you'll probably see people like, okay, he's going to talk about these issues. We need to do something about it. I think that's the way it's going to flow.
Interesting.
I got two questions if you don't mind sticking around a couple of more minutes.
Absolutely.
Okay. First, I don't know how long you've been involved in this movement, but are you out of the Atlanta area?
No, I'm born and raised in Arkansas, but I currently live in LA. I've been living in LA for about 7 years now.
Okay, reason I asked is I was going to ask, did you know Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad before he made his transition? You know who I'm talking about?
I know who you're talking about, but I've never met him.
Okay, and the reason why I asked that is back when he was alive, he used to shake up a lot of the athletes and basically create, make them give to the movement, make them be active in terms of social activism. And I remember him going to the All-Star games and I don't know how he did it, but he would go to the All-Star games and be down there harassing the players and and forcing them to take account and do something for Black people. And so I didn't know. I was wondering what your thoughts was on that. So I was wondering if you had met him, and if any of his stuff inspired you from that standpoint.
Yeah, one of the things that, and it's actually another book I'm working on too, is really looking at community development through sport. So near my university is Inglewood. Like Inglewood is maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops down the street from where I teach. And so for the last 4 or 5 years prior to SoFi Stadium being built, you had every activist, every ma and pa type store fighting against the building of the stadium because of course, gentrification and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so me and a few of my other colleagues from the business school to, the environmental sustainability schools, we would all go into these communities and try to build up strategies for them to fight back against these owners who were going to come in and who were initially going to charge the citizens of Inglewood to pay for that stadium until
Wow.
he finally said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to cover this whole thing. But here's the issue now. So the Clippers are wanting to separate themselves from the Lakers. And so they want to stop playing in Crypto Arena. And they are going to build their own new arena right across the street from SoFi Stadium, which is going to be another big problem. But the thing that they promised, and I always have a problem with these organizations that promise this stuff. They said that they're going to make their stadium so environmentally friendly that it won't cause pollution whatsoever. It won't cause an influx of traffic. It won't cause any water issues. It won't cause any plumbing issues from the way that they're building it. And I say, of course, yeah, you say that, but again, let's say that all of that is true. That's still going to cause the market to rise, and it's going to cause people to have to force for these well-known staple restaurants to leave Inglewood because they can no longer afford to pay the rent of these buildings. And so their main goal is to have all of this stuff ready for the 2028 Olympics, which will further push people out further east into the other counties, San Bernardino and otherwise. And so that's the thing, that's the big issue within the Black communities here.
Right.
All these sport organizations infiltrating the communities. And we're trying to figure out ways that if you're promising scholarships and education and that these businesses can stay here, then you need to be held accountable through this entire process. Now, they're trying to have the Clipper Stadium done by 2025. So, we still got some work to do on that end, but those are the types of things that me and some of my people are getting involved with.
Yeah. So if you got both of that being done at the same time, there's no way around it not being gentrification. There's no way around the taxes not being raised. And that also sounds like they're going to be taking advantage of the Go Green initiative that's in California, and they're going to be using some of that money and some of those resources in order to make that happen. So it sounds like to me that's basically a group of politicians trying to find a large project to initiate the Go Green initiative and have some money that they can allocate through the county in order to do so.
Right.
So yeah, that's a double hit.
Because all of this, I say again, is funneling into the 2028 Olympics, because they also said we're going to fix the traffic problem in LA by 2028. There's no way possible that can happen within the next 4 or 5 years. So it's like, again, and a lot of people are kind of falling for it. And we're like, no, you gotta watch out. You got to see who is being elected in these communities where all these villages are going to be, because they're saying they're going to have villages in the north part, in the valley of Los Angeles, all the way down to Long Beach. Now, those 3 weeks are going to be a problem in getting around. So I don't know how they say they're going to resolve that issue, but again, that's what we're trying to work on.
They'll probably have everybody on bicycles.
Probably.
Yeah, I got one more question in regards to the whole thing with getting the sports involved in community social justice.
Mm-hmm.
How do you curb or combat appropriation as it applies to that? Because I'm still pissed about there being Kwanzaa ice cream in Walmart.
Yeah.
So once you get the major sports teams on board and they start trying to make it socially acceptable to be involved in these movements, it sounds like to me just another way of putting like red, black, and green on your jersey and add some hero, some from our past on there, and next thing you know, it done watered down our movement because it's now a mainstream thing, and they find a way to make money off of it.
Yeah, I think that comes to ownership of the culture, right? I think in many ways, and in many cases, I think Jay-Z said it best. I think Dr. Casey was talking about Jay-Z earlier. that Jay-Z was talking about how, we built the culture uh, in this country. I sometimes when I'm going out with some of my homies and we'll go to like Monterey Park, big Asian community where they have a lot of Asian food. And I'm just seeing these little kids talk some, bro, what's up, bro? I'm chilling, bro. Try to talk the language. And I'm like, man, what's going on? And it's like, it's once they get it, it's like you have to come up with something else, because this is overly used. And so I think, again, there was this movement on even TikTok and social media where I think there was this white girl who was doing a lot of popular black dances and was getting a lot of credit for it. But the black creators who on TikTok were not. And so, again, I think it's trying to find a way to own the culture. Like a Jay-Z who, Dr. Casey was talking about, you're seeing all these black ass halftime shows in the Super Bowl because of his influence. So I think we need to see the ownership of the culture so that we can kind of stop seeing it being just taken away and given credit, because people gave Miley Cyrus credit for twerking, and I'm like, man, they was doing this back home in New Orleans 15, 20 years prior to her even having the stage. So what's going on? But that is, I think, what needs to happen.
Okay.
Just one reminder to you, James. One other thing that came out of Minneapolis was the LA Lakers.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
I have to keep reminding him that good people and good things do come out of Minneapolis. He seems to concentrate
Miss Sims. Miss Sims, I have brought more people on out of Minneapolis in the sporting, boxing, all different types of communities, and you people still haven't figured out to do with George Floyd Square.
You to come here. You're Mr. Scott to come here and we'll go up there and clean it
out. I think there's two places that I have not really aspired to come to in my adult life, and that's Mississippi and Minneapolis.
I'm not. That was a blow right there.
We'll see.
You'll have a light rail built in Minneapolis before I get there.
I may be going on to glory by that
time. Well, I'm sure most of the people in Minneapolis will be gone on to somewhere. But anyway, let's see. Dr. Casey, why don't you give us your final thoughts for the evening and let us know what's going on down in your neck of the woods.
We can't hear you. You're muted.
We had you there for a minute.
Oh, she went out.
I gotta come. They gotta log out, log back in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Miss Sims, you can start us there. Why don't you give us your final thoughts? Tell us what's going on up there around your neck of the woods, and what can we look forward to in these next coming weeks and months?
Well, I'm still on my quest for stepping back into more of the political kind of arena and more of the activism arena in regards to, number one, reminding our citizens and residents there are, like I'm doing you, that there are positive things and people here in Minnesota, and bring them to the forefront so people won't just be dealing out of the self-fulfilling prophecy of negative things all the time. And a lot of the politicians Another election is coming up with the city hall, and I'm saying to them that if they don't have on some of their on the literature that comes to my house, how people can vote in regards to, if you live in Minneapolis, if you literally live on the bridge, you can vote on the, you have to have someone to verify that, but students and people in nursing homes and stuff, if those politicians don't at least put that on all this literature that comes to my house so that people can become more informed and more involved and realize that yes, this includes them, then take me off their mailing list. I'm not going to read the crap.
I hear that. Let's see. I think Dr. Casey is back. Dr. Casey, y- can we hear you? Where you at?
I just see her name.
Yeah. There she is.
Did you have some final thoughts for us, Dr. Casey?
Uh-oh.
She must can't hear us.
Yeah, she looked froze.
Mm.
Yeah. Brother Williams.
Okay, so this next Monday, we're going to be doing a film review, Vanguard of the Revolution at the San Diego Central Library, starting at 6:30. So inviting people to come out there and learn more about the Black Panther Party currently now, as well as the struggles of the Black Panther Party. That's going to be taking place at the San Diego Central Library next Monday at 6:30 p.m. Also, you may get the opportunity. We just recently here established what we call the Panther Party, which is basically a white branch of the Black Panther Party, going back to what Fred Hampton Jr. had established with the Rainbow Coalition. So we're enacting that same principle here because there's no better way to get hold white people accountable than to get some white people that are willing to hold white people accountable. So from that standpoint, we are enacting the Panther Party chapter to work in solidarity with the Black Panther Party down here. So that is going to be a unique move forward, hoping that that's going to shed some light and make some things happen at a more advanced pace here in San Diego in terms of fighting justice and oppression.
Uh, Dr. Shaun, so glad to have you on the show.
Yeah.
We hope that you'll come back and talk with us as your other books progress. Why don't you give us your final thoughts for the evening? And we appreciate you coming on the show, and we hope to have you back very soon.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I'd love to come back. I love the discussion. I want to say again, we are in a time now where, um, and I think probably it's been like this for years, where enough is enough, right? We got to see some type of substantial progression, not just
Yeah.
moving it a centimeter at a time. And I think we are in a space in our society to where, even though we get a lot of backlash for talking about black issues, because they like to say, "What about black on black crimes?" It's the first excuse, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we have multiple platforms, like you say, the viewing in San Diego with the Black Panther. They're trying to shut that down. They're trying to shut kids down from understanding the history and the
Yep.
books that are out there. So it's I know it's like tough sometimes, because sometimes you're just tired of fighting and tired of pushing, and you want to see things happen in our generation. Um, that's the push for my work, for the work that I continue to put out with my books, with my research, to go challenge these establishments that don't like to that like to borrow our culture, borrow our
Yeah.
time and labor, but don't want to give credit for it. So again, that's what I'm pushing for with this book. That's what I'm pushing for with my other books. looking at sport not just as an entertainment platform, but now one that is a legitimate force for social change. And the one thing I want to end is with this. You know, the United Nations has had its ups and downs over the years as far as its relevancy. But a few years ago, they established sport as a vehicle for a lot of the human rights issues that are going on globally. So that's actually what I'm doing. My second book is to hold them and other organizations accountable to this thing that they're trying to push out. So that's the work I want to continue to do.
Interesting. Interesting.
Mhm.
Well, hey, uh, very good
Interesting.
show tonight. Interesting topics, and we look forward to talking about more solutions, as well as at least trying to find more common ground,
Yeah,
and finding a starting point.
yeah.
So I'm going to close with a thought here, and this might be lost on a lot of people that aren't into sport, because Sunday night I saw something very unusual happen in Salt Lake City. A pedophile and a racist were absolutely giving standing ovations in Salt Lake City, Utah. Let
Mm.
me, let me, a pedophile and a racist were giving standing ovations in Salt Lake City, Utah. Kyrie Irving was booed. Anybody see the irony in that?
Hmm.
Mhm.
I'm just saying. Have a good night, y'all. Talk to you next week.
All the people.
Peace and love. Bye bye.